Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 20th meeting of the Housing and Community Development Committee of the Common Council. For the record, committee members Conti, myself, Kimbrough, Love, and Valorant are here, along with Council Member Judy Doche, the sponsor of the legislation, and our legislative aide, Michelle Andre. The topic of discussion is Resolution 75-111-19. It's a resolution asking Mayor Sheehan's administration to conduct a housing vacancy study to determine Albany's eligibility for the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. There is a public comment period. If you haven't done so thus far, there's a sign-up sheet over there on the table. And with that, I will have the sponsor, Mr. O'Shea, go into to start the discussion.
Thank you. So this actually doesn't determine our eligibility for the Emergency Tenant Protection Act because there are parts of that are already in effect. This relates to the City of Albany potentially participating in a board that would be a county board. We might be the only municipality, and therefore we would essentially appoint all the members to the board to regulate rents in the City of Albany. Unfortunately, the way the state legislation works, it's only for properties that have more than 6 units and built before 1974. And I am hoping that that is something that changes in the future, because we are having a lot of properties be developed in the City of Albany, and a lot of people are getting significant tax breaks, and they are charging very high rents. I'm very conscious of the fact that Albany's rents have been going up significantly. I want to say skyrocketing in a sense. Recently, a project that I discouraged the IDA from giving as great a tax break to as they did, the Palladium project, is now renting apartments for $14.50, starting at $14.50. And they've got a 90% tax abatement for the first 12 years of operation, and then declining from there. I encouraged them to provide a partial abatement for that particular project. In that particular case, I want to note that I raised the question about the fact that the eligibility for the tax abatement was being based upon the developer saying that rents were going to start at $12.50. When indeed, 2 years before that, he had provided me with rents and provided the planning department with proposed rents that would be around $14.50. So that's blatantly unfair that we're giving tax breaks to people, to entities like that, and then having them charge those kinds of rents. But then they start helping, part of the problem is they start helping fuel the expectations about what other landlords will be able to charge and will charge in the City of Albany. And I think that that's why we're seeing rents go up in general across the city, and I think that we need to address that. My mother was fortunate enough to have rent control in the City of Albany, and she needed it. She wound up with custody of 5 children on a secretary's salary. But it's a little unrealistic what happened there with regard to the continuation of the amount of rent that she was able to pay under those particular circumstances. And so there are some horror stories in the city of New York with regard to landlords that are struggling with rent control that seem kind of unfair. I want to make it clear, we're not talking about putting ourselves in a situation like New York City, because we're starting from here, where our rents are already too high for a lot of individuals in the city. And United Tenants and Housing for All has done an excellent job in providing us with information with regard to the number of people who are rent challenged in the City of Albany, and we know that. I note that we have a lot of housing stock in the City of Albany that is underdeveloped or needs to be, that is being abandoned. For the most part, those are properties that have 2, 3, and 4 units in them. And this would not affect those particular properties. I want to note also, last year we had our sister city send representatives here, and they talked about what they were doing to help with affordable housing in their city, and how that really helped them address urban blight by giving everybody a decent place to live, a healthy, safe place to live. And for the most part, they're doing things that are very novel with regard to energy efficiency as well. And it struck me that we as a city are not quite doing enough, including granting maybe too much abatement without there being some real limits on what landlords of new developments can charge. And with regard to the continuing escalation of rents well beyond the rate of inflation, well beyond what people are seeing in terms of growth in their own incomes. So I'm fully supportive of us doing this study, finding the money to do this study, asking the mayor to make sure that that happens. I'm relatively confident that we will find that we are eligible then to move forward. And then we make determinations at that point about what our legislation looks like, and the board will be determining appropriate increases, et cetera, for this class of housing. I expect that there will be some pushback on that. And I am hoping that some of that pushback results in more pressure being put on the legislature to expand rent control, rent stabilization to properties that have been developed after 1974, because I think that is the equitable thing to be doing. So those are my comments on this. Be glad to answer any questions that committee members might have.
Yes. At this point, no question. My question is how you propose, where can we find the money? You have any ideas about where, any suggestions for where to look?
Well, we are, based upon our review of what has happened in the budget that was before us in 2020 and looking at the realistic projections that the administration was making with regard to 2020 as compared to where we are in 2019. We're aware of the fact that there is some money surplus in 2019, and I have suggested that we move forward swiftly on this contract for the RFP and use some of that money. Even at this point, we haven't expended all of our contingency fund money in the 2019 budget, and that would be one obvious place that, I mean, this is the kind of thing that you kind of anticipate. The contingency funding might be used for unexpected expenses.
Thank you.
Got a question. You're saying that we should work, do this quickly. Quickly is like, what does that look like? What does that look like?
Well, we have, 5 weeks before the end of the fiscal year, in which that's a normal time frame to do an RFP, especially when there's a lot of models out there. for the administration. There's other municipalities that are doing this kind of thing. So I don't think that that's a heavy lift for the administration to put the RFP out there and seek bids on this.
And members of the board, who are you thinking about being members of the board? You asking people to volunteer, or council members, people at large? I mean,
Well, that's the next step.
okay.
This is solely about authorizing the housing vacancy study.
Right.
We don't get to that next step of hashing that out. That is
Okay.
not, I'm not looking to fast track that
Okay.
at this point. I'm
All
just
right.
saying is,
You just-
when people ask me about, where does the money come from?
Right.
Right now, I'm aware of some surplus in the 2019 budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was why, when this was raised at public hearing,
Mm-hmm.
I immediately had this particular resolution
Okay.
drafted as to
So
get
one
this
more
before
question.
the administration
Yeah.
ASAP.
So if we don't use 2019 money, do we lose it, or it rolls over?
Well, then it goes into an unappropriated fund balance. And sometimes during the year, you do go into the unappropriated fund balance. You first start looking at your contingency line and other potential savings lines. So at the end of the year, every year,
Right.
we're doing transfers from one account to another exceeding $4 million because we didn't have all of those people on salary in, for example, in DGS or, the police department, or we didn't spend that amount of money on printing supplies or contractors, et cetera. The Common Council every year, doesn't use about $20,000 to $30,000 of its budget. This year we had our council leave, 3 months before the end of 4 months before the end of the year. So that happens all the time, and so it doesn't have to be, we can sit down with the administration of the budget and say, where, is this going to come from?
Okay.
Okay. You have any questions, sir?
I would like to bring in, the administration so we can have a discussion, and we, where I stand on this, so I'd like to see if we can start that conversation.
Okay, yeah. You have any questions for Ms. O'Shea or no?
No, I've
okay.
already had we have different views.
Yes.
I'm willing to go nuclear to fund it if we're having bond. I know we
Okay.
all agree on that, but, I want to.
All right.
I just want to be clear, I'm bonding. This is
I
not a
understand.
capital
I
expense.
know.
This is not a
Okay.
capital
I know.
expense.
Okay,
We have to
yeah,
find-
conversation for another time, right?
Yeah.
Okay?
I know.
So with that, the committee's going to recognize Mr. Shea from the administration to give us some information.
Yeah, so we, thank you for having me. We met with some of the advocates that are joined, that have joined the committee tonight. We went over the class of buildings that this would apply to in the city. We have very similar information. We don't have any objection to this resolution. In terms of the concern over cost, I think, some of us had some sticker shock when we looked at what other municipalities paid. I sort of think we can get that price down. I think there's ways to do that, and I think, for what they're looking at, I think some municipalities may have paid too much, but, we're more than willing to draft the RFP and get it posted, yeah. Do you have any questions that I can answer, in the short
Where
term?
would you find the money?
Where would I find the money? Well, that's something, I don't want to get too specific. It's something I've brought to the attention of the budget director. I would yield to him on it. I'm not sure that this is an expense that we can, under state law, bond for, because,
It's an operating.
yeah, and, there's provisions for things like settlements, but this one, we're having the attorneys look at it. I'm not sure we can. I appreciate your commitment to that, but,
I have state finance law, section 11 memorized. No.
yeah.
So, okay, well, we're not.
I always think you can find ways if you want to find ways.
Okay,
I
we'll
can-
we'll let
But that's
committee
all-
members ask questions. We'll
Yeah,
start with Mr. Conti.
Yeah, so I forgot what the question was. So the RFP, in effect, will potentially determine what the cost of the study would be?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And do you have any outside estimates as to what it might be?
We don't, I know.
Some cities have done.
Yeah, some other cities have come in high. If we were to base it on that, this could run anywhere from, I'm reluctant to even speak a number. The advocates are saying we can do this for around 30, right? 35.
Isn't that
So,
what Kingston is doing?
yeah. So if you take that size and you multiply it to match our population, it's obviously much more, it's a much more significant cost. But I'm not convinced that, I would like to believe that we can get this to a more reasonable cost. We've done a lot of studies on a whole host of things. They don't come in that high. They don't come in, 150,000. So I'm hopeful that we can get there. Yeah.
What's the type of organization or entity that would do it?
We're researching that. Yeah, this is new territory, but there's consultants that do this type of review. I couldn't even give you an example, to be honest. Yeah.
So,
And, I'm sorry, and the review would be just for those properties
yes,
or apartments that would be eligible?
6 or more units built before 1974. Yeah.
Okay.
I was actually surprised how many apartments there winds up being.
I was surprised too, yeah. I think the number was in the 7,000s in terms of units. Yeah, I was
I thought it was about
shocked.
5,000 or something.
Yeah, I thought it was like 5,500.
5,500.
So you still,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you still
And this,
asking?
We mapped it, so ours might be high, not accounting for, Sam was going through pulling out some nonprofits, some other classifications, so I'm sure ours was a little high, but,
okay.
yeah.
Do you know this would apply to conversions that are happening, for example, not residential conversions of, office space, for example, to residential?
That were built
Which are all the ones.
We're seeking guidance on that. Yeah, that's one of the things that's not
I'm
clear
sorry,
right now.
what did you say, Richard?
Whether it would apply to conversion of office space to residential,
Oh,
that's happening, because all those buildings are older.
They were built before 1974, converted later.
They were not-
So
They're
that's,
not otherwise residential buildings, they
Yeah.
are, but they are being
Right.
converted that way.
so what do you, yeah, so how do you handle that? We're seeking some clarification on that, yeah.
we're not the first municipality dealing with issues, so it's
Right.
got to be out there.
Yeah.
I think since the law was expanded, we probably are.
What?
I think since the law was expanded, that's not been an issue before.
But in New York City?
I don't know. I don't know if that's that, well,
I mean, there's a lot of experience in New York City, right?
Different animal.
anyway.
Yeah. We are, that's something we're working on, yeah. It's our assessor was the first to raise that, actually, at a leadership meeting. We do have an attorney assigned to this matter, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So, you done, Mr. Conti?
Yeah, I reserve the right to come back.
That's okay. We can swing back around to you if we need to. I'm good, so you okay? Mr. Ballard?
I got 2 questions. Do you know how many units Kingston had roughly? Did they have more than 55? Did they have 15? Did they have only 12?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, yeah.
And when would,
I know what their cost was, but, I didn't pull, what their review looked like.
and when would you start the process to go for the RFP?
Our, law office would draft it and it would get posted and, we would do outreach to our list to make sure that, we were casting a wide net and hopefully get the most competitive price possible.
Okay, let the record reflect, Councilmember Anani has joined us.
And when would, once you do the RFP and you go out, when do you see the study actually starting?
Once it's reviewed and scored and we meet to discuss the cost and everything, I mean, it would, there's nothing that would preclude it from starting in short order once a selection is made.
Okay. Mr. Ballard?
No, thank you.
Mr. O'Shea, you have any questions? Any more questions?
I just want to say, it sounds like the the administration is looking to move forward, and I'm glad to help in any way I can in terms of, resolutions if we need to transfer funds, or if we, if you want me to take a look at the RFP, or...
I appreciate that, yeah.
Okay. All right, so Ms. Renani, you have any?
All set.
You're all set. Okay, so with that, thank you. Mr.
Thank
Shea.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point, we'll open it up to public comment.
Do you want to sign up?
Yeah, list is over there still.
Hold on. How many minutes? 5.
Thank you. Okay, Laura Phelps. That asks that you state your address, your name and address when you come up.
Before we start with public comments, I just want to note for the record that council members have been receiving a number of emails from other members of our community in support of this.
That's correct, and I'll add to that I've received two, so,
I have to.
yeah. So,
Yes.
okay? Ms. Phelps.
Hello, I'm Laura Feltzer. I work at United Tenants of Albany. I live at 143 Eagle Street up the road. I'm going to try not to be super redundant. I think I had a couple of answers to some of the questions that were raised before. So Kingston's RFP is on the move. Somebody is doing their vacancy study right now. It's over 1,000 units, and I think so that cost came in around $30,000. But they had no access to universities or any real good kind of like more public entity that might do this at a lower cost. So I really think that the universities could be a really good resource for us in kind of embarking on this endeavor. So once we figure out that the vacancy rate is at or below 5%, which I'm pretty sure it's going to be, looking at some of the vacancy studies that we've been doing in Albany, it sounds like there's 1,070 positively ID'd vacant buildings, and 871 of those are buildings that are residential with less than 3, and only 47 of them seem to be listed as apartment buildings with more than 4 units. So, and I think we know from working at United Tenants of Albany, it's really hard for people to find housing in these kind of larger buildings that even kind of intrinsically have a little bit more regulation just because of the fact that they're bigger and they might have a property manager.
So just back up, you said 1,070 buildings,
Right.
but those are all buildings, and so buildings with units of, did you say with units of 6 or more? Did you have that number, or was that?
It sounds like of those 1,070 positively ID'd vacant buildings, only 47 look to be listed as apartment buildings with more than 4 units. So it's not like those numbers are kind of in relation to this, so that's why it's not like 6 or more like what.
So these are vacant buildings, not vacant units within buildings?
Right, whole buildings.
All right. And I'm wondering, I mean, there could be all different reasons why a building is vacant and not actually on the market for rental or anything like that.
Right.
So I don't know if that's, yeah.
Yeah, because with the vacancy rate, we're looking at housing that's habitable and ready to rent.
Right.
So registered vacant buildings are probably not habitable or ready to rent.
Okay.
So just kind of
Okay.
thinking critically about that vacancy rate.
Yeah.
So Kingston and Ossining both did their RFP process outside of their budget period, which I just think is interesting and maybe of importance. And some of the other things that ETPA does, so I know we've talked about how it's going to limit and manage the amount that rents are increased every year. It's also going to require landlords to keep all equipment and services in good working order in these buildings. So it's going to be a really good measure to protect us against blight and vacancy in those buildings because they're going to have to be in good repair in kind of a more clear, regulated way than what we have with our code enforcement system as it exists now. It gives tenants the right to a lease renewal, so it's going to have those intrinsic good cause eviction protections that we lack. And the enforcement and regulation of ETPA is handled by the State Division of Housing and Community Renewal, so it's not going to be something that's tasked on the City of Albany really at all. And that entity has the power to reduce rents and sue landlords for civil penalties that sometimes are payable to tenants. And so really, like when we're talking about this RFP, it's kind of one of the only major aspects that we're asking the city to invest in for something that is going to be so good for us. Because, like we said, the county is the one who's tasked with really doing the process of getting the board, and then that board is managed by the state. So those are the things I wanted to mention. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. You think
Yes.
maybe you could throw a little summary of that together and get it to Michelle for us?
Sure, of course.
Michelle Under.
Yes.
Thank you very
all.
much.
Can I
Yeah.
can we ask a question?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. No,
Oh, is it public comment or public hearing? Because public
no,
comment,
it's public comment.
So I don't-
We're not asking questions.
Sorry.
Okay.
Comment.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That
it was
would be
great
very-
how you kept Mr. Conti in order there.
Good point of clarification.
Nice time
Okay,
to jump in.
next, Adrian Hill. Just your name and address.
Adrian Hill, 728 Madison Avenue, apartment 208. Good evening. Currently, hi, how are you? Good to see you. Currently the new community organizer for United Tenants. I've only been in the position 7 weeks, but I have been a service provider in the Capital District since 1993, working with at-risk and vulnerable populations. Economically disadvantaged racial and ethnic minorities, low-income families, women and children, the elderly, homeless, people with HIV, mentally ill, men and women transitioning out of the prison system and rehabilitation facilities. Direct service, where stabilization is oftentimes necessary before the real work can be done for the issues that people present for. I believe my experience can speak to the connection between housing and health, and why I believe the vacancy study is so crucial for a sector of the population who sometimes can't find their voice. And there are those of us who work in this community that are their voice. Oftentimes we are their hands, their feet, and even think for them. And when they come to us with some very concrete needs, housing being one of them. A basic human need that people who are already experiencing trauma and difficulty, who may have some histories with dysfunction, it's a very necessary component to help them move along in the continuum. We endeavor to change the present narrative of people living in housing that is inadequate, unaffordable, and puts them in states of housing insecurity. I am of the belief that housing is a social determinant of health, with three main intersecting parts: housing conditions, affordability, and residential stability. Part of my duties at United Tenants is listening to the calls from tenants who utilize our housing hotline. I then put them into a database, and the housing counselors return those calls. 6 out of 10 calls are reporting inadequate housing, problems with plumbing, heating, electricity, pipes bursting, problems with their toilets, sewage systems backing up into their apartments, pest infestation, peeling paint, and other structural problems. And all these things impact health directly. Affordability is also of a paramount concern. Based on federal guidelines surrounding housing affordability, families should pay no more than 30% of their income for rent. According to the Fiscal Policy Institute report of 2019, nearly 50% of the households who rent in the City of Albany are cost burdened, paying more than 1/3 of their monthly income toward their housing costs. Another part of the report indicates there is another 25% who are severely cost burdened, spending over half of their monthly income on housing costs. The rental rates for apartments in Albany continue to increase people's wages, and those who are on entitlements have not. The maximum benefit amount for a single person on temporary assistance in Albany County is $367 a month. A household of 3 is $698 a month. People who work minimum wage jobs, let's say just $11 an hour, they bring home between $275 and $325 after taxes. Add to those expenses groceries, hygiene products, utilities, childcare, transportation, co-pays if they have medical conditions where they have to get medications from pharmacies, and that money goes very quickly. Fear of eviction, poor housing quality, and instability have been associated with physical health outcomes brought on by stress and trauma. Housing instability disrupts work, school, and daycare arrangements, as well as social networks of both parents and children. Worries over the stability of one's housing situation and poor control over the conditions of one's home can result in distress and subsequent anxiety and depression. Children and adults experience poor housing quality and instability differently. When I've worked with families where the primary caregiver might be a single mother without a lot of support and without the wherewithal to take care of her children. They are generally in a state of anxiety, given the fact that she is often questioning what's going to be next for her family. She might have to make some decisions that may not be to her liking, but because it's about her family, and when you're put in a situation that depends on your survival, you make decisions that you may not want to. Housing conditions are tied to economic factors. Vulnerable populations are in need of some equity in this situation. And that's my main reason for being here, to encourage this council to support this as it moves forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention the 3-minute time limit on and what he was saying, and what most of you will say is important and needs to be heard, but 3 minutes, okay?
Is anybody timing? Would you like me to time?
Sure, please, 3 minutes. Deborah Rimbert?
Bit different than what I have, than what we have in Schenectady. You got you come and ask to sit here, but we have to stand up there. But I had up a group called.
Just your name.
My
and
name
address.
is Deborah Rimbert, and I had up a group called STAMP. It's a Schenectady Tenant Association program. where we help people with these same problems that you people are dealing with over here in Albany. And I recently I have experienced some issues that have happened here in Schenectady. I have family members that live here as well in Schenectady. I mean Albany. I'm saying Schenectady. I meant to say Albany. You okay? I was just talking to some of the group. I've been dealing with a citizen action group, and they wanted me to make sure that I bring to the attention a rent survey that we need to get the mayor to consider rent survey for this area. We need to consider rent survey in Schenectady as well, and also rent protection, because as the last speaker was saying, we do throughout the Capital District, we have these problems, not only in Albany, but we're having these problems also in Schenectady as well, where we need to have rent protection for the tenants that are renting, because they are charging an astronomical amount of money for the rents, and the housing is inadequate, as has already been said, and we need to change the dynamics of that, because people are literally suffering. We have people that are 5 in a household, and there may be just one person that's actually working in the household, and they're not able to adequately, if they were to try to get a better job or get 2 jobs to try to substantiate their family, their rent goes up astronomically if they get $1 over the amount of money that is required for them. And that needs to change. I understand that the poverty level here in New York State, I think, is $21,000. That needs to change. It needs to go up higher so that people might be able to substantially take care of their families better, because if they try to do 2 jobs, they get penalized for that. That needs to change. And, in a lot of these places where they have these high risers, they are also charging people. If you come into their facility, they're charging you for parking if you're visiting your family member, and that's $65, and that's $135 when they tow your vehicle. How many poor people can afford that? And if they try to give some kind of a event, like a birthday party or something, everybody that comes to that party has to pay the $35, or else have their vehicles towed. This is something that needs to be considered also. I don't want to over-talk here because you did say 3 minutes, but a lot of the things that I wanted to bring to the table has already been brought to the table. So I'm really hoping that you will consider thinking about what's happening to these families. And another thing too, they have on the premises on some of these housing facilities, they have the washer and dryer over there. Okay, if you have stair-step children, you can't go over there and take all them stair-step children and the laundry to go wash their clothes. They need to have these facilities, since they're charging all this money, where you can have your washer and dryer in your apartment, so that, because they have washer and dryers that are just for apartment type quarters anyway, that can help these mothers to keep their houses up and keep their children's clothes clean, so that they may be able to go to school the next day, and all that kind of stuff. People just don't have all this money like people think that they do. You have to pay a whole $2 and $3 to go to the laundromat and all that stuff.
Thank
so
you
it's
for your
ridiculous.
comments, Ms. Rember. Look at my card. Look familiar?
Can we get them?
Thank you.
I think I spoke to you, didn't I speak?
Yeah, a couple times. But thank you for your comments.
And thank you very much. And let's see, can we change some of these issues? Thank you.
Lauren Manning.
I feel so close.
That's the idea.
So first, I want to thank Councilmember Duchette for sponsoring this resolution. I think it is much needed. Thank you. I am Lauren Manning, 8 Tyler Trace Terrace, formerly known as Ida Yarborough Homes. And I think that's important because, as you all know, I am watching gentrification in real time around my house. I'll start with the how are we going to fund this. It's a little infuriating to me because you guys have a history to look back on. Where did you find the money to fund the new police chief? You always, as a city, find money when you want it, but you can never find the money when the community needs it. That was like out the blue. We need an extra $25,000 to pay him. You guys found it like that. Where'd you find that money? It's there. That being said, I don't think so. In 2016, data showed half of the people living in Albany earned less than $25,000. I made $24,000 for a long time. Do you know what that looks like? That is $950 every 2 weeks before taxes. I literally was paying 89% of my income for a 2-bedroom apartment when I needed 3 bedrooms. My saving grace was waiting 4 years on the public housing waiting list and getting in. I was chronically homeless for all of my 20s and much of my 30s until I got into housing. My son, who is now 22, it took him 3 years to pass his Regents exams and graduate after he hit the 12th grade. I really attributed that to the 7 different schools he had to attend every time we ended up homeless. I was blessed to have friends and family who loved me, so I didn't end up in a shelter. I ended up couch surfing. But every time I would have to uproot my son, I lost everything I owned. I had to start all over, and it wasn't for a lack of not working hard enough, not trying hard enough. I came from generational poverty. I grew up in the projects when I was young. Nobody left us, my family, anything to start with. And there is no way you guys can continue, as Councilmember Duchette pointed out, to grant all these tax breaks. Where do you find the money for that? And not consider your most vulnerable population. You know, we have a police chief right now who's talking a lot about targeted policing when poverty is a greater predictor of crime and violence. That housing stability is that major piece. That ripple down effect would improve the crime and violence around here. Improving blight would improve the crime and violence around here. Giving children a stable environment so they can go through high school and graduate with plans of going to college. Because when you're scared, when you come home to eviction notices on your door, court notices on your door, I came home to them all the time when I was young. I literally grew up in a state of PTSD. Being a child and your parents don't talk to you about that, but I can read, I see those eviction notices. I literally grew up with a state of PTSD. I've been in housing since 2010. am in a place where I don't have this constant anxiety that one bad thing is going to leave me and my children homeless. You guys have the power. It's not a lot of money. One less parade, one less Alive at 5, one less statue in Washington Park. The money's there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Regina Du.
Hello,
Name and address.
my name's Regina Du. I live at 49 Jennings Drive in Albany, New York, part of Albany Housing Authority. And I came to Albany as a result of a very dysfunctional marriage. When I left that, I came into a community where I worked for my rent. And when they became too demanding of me, I had to leave there and I became homeless. And I lived in a shelter, a woman's shelter for a summer. And that was a huge educational experience for me, being a homeless person. That was 1987. In 1989, a job I had was ending and I was stressing out a bit and I had an aneurysm, had to have brain surgery. And by the grace of God, and you know, they saved me from that. And I was able to recover and bloom again, you know. But ever since then, I have lived in Albany Housing Authority, and they've been my blessing because I never knew, if, depending upon my health, could I afford my rent, you know, and you're always living in the state of fear. Is Key Bank going to deposit it at the right time this month, or am I going to get an eviction notice? I always pay my rent, but quite often, in the past, I have gotten eviction notices. No fault of mine. It was Key Bank wasn't depositing it on time, and it's scary. It's a very scary thing to think, oh my God, you know, I'd have to go back to the shelter. But Friday nights, I go visit my cousin from time to time who works with the street people here in Academy Park, feeding the homeless. And I was astounded it's at least a 2-hour line of homeless people getting food. She comes up from Kinderhook making egg salad sandwiches for people to eat, you know, and they're handing people food to eat. I said, this is the capital of New York City, and there's lines and children and old people and veterans and just people like you and me that are homeless, you know, one paycheck away from being on the streets. And, you know, I think we can do a lot better. At one point in time, I was working in Section 8, and I asked the city for a list of rental units in the city, and it was that thick. There are a lot of rental units that maybe you don't even know about, but I think we can do a lot better job. Something happened in the 60s where, you know, when medicine became profitable, housing became profitable. We got to get back to human rights. It's human right. Medical care, rent control, it's the only sane way to go, and we have to become human again. I think we have an example nationwide of what things can go wrong. So let's get it right, City of Albany, and pass this tenants. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Michelle Masterjian, is that right? Yes. I got it right?
I need to leave, so I wonder if before I can, if he doesn't object, I can give my vote.
Okay.
So I have a prior commitment and I have to leave. But if the committee doesn't object, I'd like to be able to leave my vote in support of moving the resolution out of committee.
How about a motion?
If you want to move
let's move it now and then get the rest of the comments. So motion to move it out to council.
I'd like to make the motion to move out to council.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So it'll be moved out with a positive recommendation, but we are still.
I apologize that I have to.
Took the whole climatic part. I had a whole speech ready.
You can still give your speech. We're not done. So I'm sorry. Just your name and your address.
My name is Michelle Masurgeon.
Can you talk up a little louder?
Yes. My name is Michelle Masurgeon. I live at 8 Hall Place in Albany, New York. And I hope that you pass this resolution, which it sounds like you are.
You already did.
Yeah, you did.
Well, we still got to go before the council. This gets it out of committee, but
You're moving it out of committee.
Yeah, we moved it out of committee. It'll pass.
I believe that a lot of the stipulations in the resolution were pretty clear of what the need is. And I think that this is a very good way of, of stabilizing rents in the city and keeping housing affordable while some of the other things that are going on in the city will help. Because we do have an issue where the supply is less than the demand in affordable housing in the city. And this is one way of keeping some of these units affordable. So that's my
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Kelleher. So name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. My name is Sean Kelleher, 12 California Ave, apartment B414 in Albany. I'm an organizer with the Capital District Democratic Socialists of America. I'd like to talk about how rent stabilization and tenants' rights, as represented in the ETPA, are important to quality of life, and how important they are to making a city thrive, and how important they are to making the residents' lives flourish. It's been a trend in recent times that rents have risen and wages have been stagnant. Testimonials and statistics from some of the other speakers here have shown that more, so I won't get too into it, but it is a overwhelming and systemic trend that is not something that can be solved by individuals striving, by just individuals trying their hardest. It's something that can only be tackled through large systemic action with something such as the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. And the council has raised concerns about the cost of the study, which would be the first step towards this. And I think that the city should be investing in its future, should be investing in its people. And I think that that sort of investment should not take the form of new developments or new hotels or what have you, that many times will just get used by real estate businessmen who see these homes as just units of profit, not as places for people to grow a family, for people to live their lives and thrive. We should invest in the city's future by making it an easier place to live, making it a place where people can not be precarious, making it a place where people actually want to live, where people can live their lives to the fullest, not be stressed by the precarity of having to pay rent that they can barely afford, making a place where people will want to move and want to stay. So I urge you to support the working people, the low-income people, all residents of Albany, and move forward with the study and ETPA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to add a quick comment. I think, not relating to you, it's just in general. When I asked Councilmember Doche how we would pay for it, that wasn't to say, how are we going to pay for this, like I have a problem with it. I absolutely don't have a problem with it. I actually already knew her response because I talked to her about this stuff. I wanted you all to hear it. Okay, that's why I did that. Don't get me wrong. All right, so don't. Okay.
Well, everyone here already voted for it, and everyone here supports it.
Right.
The fight's not going to be here.
Right. We still got a ways to go, but we're moving in the right direction.
And this may pass, and this will probably pass in the council. The fight's going to happen once the survey's done, and we actually have to act on it. And you're going to see this. You're going to see not just people who support it, but the real estate investors who don't support it are going to come out as well.
Right.
So, I mean, you're talking to the choir here.
Right.
You know, so, but that doesn't mean stop.
Right.
That does not mean stop. Because just because we support it, just because the council passes this study, once the study's done, we still need organization to be pushing this when there's a counter push. So just want to make sure, you know, and this isn't going to solve all the problems either.
Right.
I don't want to give people hopes that this is going to solve, and it's going to be. This is just units that were built before 1974 that are 6+. So I just want to make sure we're clear about that too. I don't like giving people false hope or making something sound like it's better than it really is.
Right, and most of the folks out here have been in the trenches for a long time, so I don't think they have a problem with that. We have 4 more speakers. Next is Bridget Arduini.
What's the last name?
Arduini, Arduini.
It's like tortellini, linguine, like a noodle.
My name is Alfredo, so I understand how that is.
Okay. Yeah. So your name, you just said, Bridget, your address?
My name's Bridget Arduini. I live at 141 Benson in the 11th Ward. I would like to thank the council for moving the motion. I fully expect your support of this throughout the process, and I urge you to do this not for my personal benefit. I don't live in a unit that would qualify, but I wanted to share a personal experience that I've had as a renter. Just this summer, my landlord gave me 3 weeks' notice that my rent was going to increase by $100 a month. And I had to push back on that because, and I had been on a month-to-month lease, and it was going to be locked in for a year. 3 weeks' notice in the middle of the busiest time of my year in the summer. So I had to push back on that and say, I don't accept this. I will move out, but I can't do it in that time frame. The move took tons of time, thousands of dollars. I had to find a place. I had to pack up all my stuff and move. I have resources to handle that situation. I have a job that affords me paid time off. I have family locally that could help me pack. I had the resources to handle that situation. And I recognize fully that not everyone does, and we need to protect those folks. So I realize that this, this legislation eventually, if it were to pass, would not necessarily directly affect me, but I'm here to tell you that I will be on the front lines fighting for people who have less privilege than me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the 11th Ward.
Andy Kyer.
Hi, my name is Andy Kyer. I live on 83 Spring Street. I'm a tenant. I'll be very brief because, as has been mentioned, the fight isn't here. We'll continue outside of this room. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the support. I, in truth, have very little to add on top of the powerful commentary that we've heard tonight. I really appreciate the other folks who've come forward and shared their stories. I'm up here to voice my support for this resolution. Look forward to seeing the study completed, and also look forward to this being the first of hopefully many steps to help protect our most vulnerable residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Jerome Johnson.
Good evening, how are you?
Good evening, sir.
I'm going to be brief. I live at 28 First Street, right across the street from St. Joseph's Church. I moved into that house in 1980 and watched that church steadily go down and rot.
Can you just speak up a little bit?
Okay.
Because the folks.
Oh, okay.
So the vote. You're fine where you're sitting. Just kind of raise your voice.
Okay.
A bit.
And I watched that church steadily rot in the middle of our neighborhood unnecessarily. I think the church can be renovated into a magnet school for the health sciences and performing arts. All the studies that I've read show that the jobs that are going to grow in the future are in technology and in health services. I'm 78 years old. We'll be living longer. I need people to take care of me. That's a joke. Anyway, so but that's where the jobs are. Why let the church rot? Renovate it, and it would be a beacon in that neighborhood, especially for low-income people. I think the problem in Aubrey Hill is not about race, it's about poverty. Aubrey Hill is filled with black people, but that's not the problem. Aubrey Hill is filled with poor people who need jobs. If they had jobs that paid a decent wage, they wouldn't need Section 8 and food stamps. When I discussed the idea of renovating that church, I got 3 minutes, of renovating that church, the issue
You're actually supposed to be talking about the resolution at hand, but...
Okay, well, gee, I didn't know that. But anyway,
Continue.
they talked about how can people afford, if we renovate that church, how can people afford to go to that school? First of all, it would be a public school. Second of all, get partners to develop the church. If it's going to be a church to develop the health sciences for kids, you got Albany Medical Center, that other hospital over there, Whitney and Young. Those partners could be brought in to be help contribute to the funds to train the people they're going to hire in the future, the nurses, the pharmacists, etc. They could be partners. The second thing as far as income. When they look at income packages, they don't look at the total picture. They just say, you can't have this because you only make $10, $11 an hour. But what about the earned income credit? If you got 2 or 3 kids, you will get $3,000 or $4,000, $10,000, and you can also get some of that money during the year. You don't have to wait till the end of the year. They don't look at that package so they can say, let's shift the emphasis from low-income rental units to low-income home ownership. And look at all the construction and demand, and a certain percentage of all that construction that's done, people from Marble Hill get some of those jobs. So it's not based upon race, it's based on class. But anyway, what I want to do is ask this group to support the idea of developing that church into a magnet school for the health sciences and performing arts. I'll be prepared to write up a more detailed proposal and have it typed if I think that you'll consider it, and bring it back to this committee the next time you meet.
Well,
That's it.
Is it yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got my phone number, right? You got my phone number,
Yeah, I
right?
got it.
Thank
Well,
you.
here, give it to me anyway. Give it to me. Okay. I'm
Thank you
done.
for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Olena Lake.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm a renter now, but I would like to speak a little bit about the problems of small investors and landlords. I don't know if you have special sessions for this, but they have their own problem with renting. For example, I decided at some point...
Which, I'm sorry, your address?
My address?
Your address.
Where I live, 175 South 1 Street, Boston.
Okay, good.
So, I pay my rent, everything is pretty much, everything is good. It's a big building. So, and actually, I like the idea to go from small low-income renting to low-income housing. But the renting has its own problems for landlords. For example, when I decided to become some sort of homeowner, I purchased the house for myself and my family. Unfortunately, the circumstances changed pretty quickly, and I needed to consider to do something with renting or selling this house. So I started building this house. And I encouraged very big obstacles from the city. They stopped my constructions because the deck was exceeding the maximum coverage when the coverage was extended. So it's for me, that was improper stopping. Because they stopped this construction, I incurred a lot of losses because I had FHA-supported loan, and the loan was sitting not available to me. I was paying mortgage. I encouraged a lot of losses. So this building becomes like treasure for me. And to rent it for free, it's not possible. We still live in capitalism, and we're still responsible for our properties, and the properties are costly, and we are investing our money. It's more like government solution to help the citizens and support this. But this is the problem of renting. If the house is expensive, became expensive because of actions from the city, which improperly stopped construction. Now they're kind of supporting, but I had already a lot of investments there and losses. So the other kind of side of this, my contractor always saying he's renting out his properties for decades. He builds, he rents, and he said that forget that you will have this property next year in the same condition. I built this house, try to build this house like for myself with whatever, washing machines, dryers, everything is there because I was thinking that my family will be living there. So, and he said, well, you rent it out, it will be destroyed in 1 year. It's very, very rare when the property is kept properly. So how to resolve this situation, I don't know. So there is no encouragement for investments to build something good and to renovate the properties which are vacant at this point now, when they anticipate that bad treatment from the renters. So how to resolve this problem? It's need to be kind of resolved, and to make encouragement for investors to invest in the properties and cheaper buildings. That would be a good approach as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Can you just add her to that? She's not on there. She came in late.
Can I just make one more comment?
Okay.
I understand the struggles that landlords have. I'm a landlord. I work very hard for every key I have on this keychain. So I understand that. But I also remember not having any keys on this keychain. I remember the struggles of trying to make it so the marshal doesn't come to your door. So I understand there needs to be a balance. I do. But what we're asking for is to create a stabilization so that we don't create a city where it's only for one group of people. You know, we have so many of these buildings that are being built that are luxury buildings. One in my ward, it's knocking down 29 middle income units, and it's building 99 luxury. They're going to be renting them out for a 3-bedroom for $2,100. I used to live around the corner from this building. When I moved to Albany, I used to pay up $650 for a 3-bedroom. What they're going to be charging, I couldn't even pay for a room. So when we're looking to stabilize rent, we're looking to make it so that people can afford to stay in our city. So that it's not just a city for high-income earners, but a city for anyone who wants to come and who wants to start their family here. I moved here because Albany was affordable for me to live from where I came. And that's why Albany became my home. So I just want to make sure, and I'm ready to fight for this all the way to the end. And I've made that very clear to the administration. I've made that very clear to everybody. I'm ready to fight for this all the way to the end, because I want to make sure other people feel that they can make this their home no matter how much money they make. Because, you know, we talked about income the other day. It's hard to survive on our median income. And our median income in Albany is $45,000. That is our median income. That means half the people in our city are making less than that. That's roughly $2,200 before they take out your health insurance. If you have a family, now you're talking about taking home $1,700. With a 3-unit, at a minimum you can pay today is $1,200. So we need to do something. People know I've been frustrated when I got on with the fact that I feel like our power is limited. I feel good about this, and I look forward to working with my colleagues, and I thank my colleague for putting this forward, and I look forward to seeing this to the end.
Okay.
So I just want
want to thank the committee for putting this forward. And I just want to clarify that we anticipate voting on this at our council meeting on December 2nd. Monday, December 2nd.
Yep.
Right.
And thank everybody for coming out and
Right.
your support.
And thank you for the support, the personal stories. It all matters. It's really about affordable housing, right? That's what we're talking about. Fight is on.
Yep,
Okay.
fight is on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay.